Welcome to For Collectors.
Good evening, collectors. Welcome back to the For Collectors channel. My name is Sammy Thunder, and tonight's episode that we're going to be conducting is exactly like the video that I did prior, the collector to dealer series that I did a couple weeks, well, actually a little bit longer, maybe about a month ago or so, a couple weeks before Strongsville. And I sat down with both Stan Locke from Stan's Vintage Sports Cards as well as Garrett from Ballpark Memories. And they actually had a lot. I mean, they had a lot of great things to say about my guest tonight. And so I thought, let's bring them on. We want to be able to kind of have more of kind of a historical understanding of some of the dealers that have been around for quite some time, have been pivotal, and have played a role, and a lot of some of the dealers today that are either starting to come out or have been around for a little bit and getting into the vintage. And so let's bring them in. So for my guest tonight, I have a collector and dealer, JD Heckathorn. JD, thank you so much for taking the time.
Sam, thanks for asking me on.
Oh, it's a pleasure, man. It was it was important after spending time at Strongsville, after the trade night, hanging out with you and Bill, sitting at the table, hearing the stories. I said, I gotta get one of these guys on, if not both. But I know Bill is a little shy on camera.
Right.
But I appreciate you taking the time. And so I kind of just want to start off right from the bat. I mean, where are you originally from?
I live in Rochester, Indiana. I've been here my whole life. First cards ever bought were right in my hometown. That it all started right here, and I've been here ever since.
So that's so homegrown and have stayed in Rochester, never left.
Indiana is the best state. If you're a card dealer, that's the best state, because if you go to the northeast, you have Tiger fans. You go to the northwest, you have Cubs and Sox fans. You go southeast, you have Reds fans. Southwest, Cardinal fans. So you get a lot of diversity in a customer base.
That's interesting. So I mean, this is not even a question I had, but since you kind of brought this up, it's a unique perspective. Um, Being in Indiana, you're saying it's great for as a collector and a dealer in that regards, because you have so many outlets in so many directions. Um, I guess it's sort of it's like an advantage in some ways.
I think it is an advantage. I guess if you live in Ohio, there's not always, it's either Cincinnati or Cleveland. You're going to be a lot of Cleveland. I guess you get some Pittsburgh, but or if you're down in Atlanta, you just have the Braves. I think I could be wrong, but maybe they sold more cards around here even because of that, because they were just a fan base. The people just love sports, and there's a town in every corner.
Well, let's talk about your history with Indiana and collecting. Can you take me through the very first moment where sports cards entered your life?
I guess ever since I was a kid. I mean, I've collected since I was little. My mom said it was the cheapest babysitter she ever had. She could buy me $3 worth of cards and throw me in a corner, and I was content for hours. So I've always collected. Then when I started getting a little bit more serious about my collecting, my dad was a coin dealer. So he kind of advised me on, it's hard to be a collector and it's hard to be a dealer, because sometimes you get things you want to keep, you can't keep them. And so there's a fine line there. But at first, when you're trying to get yourself built up, it is hard. Later on, and I think I see that with other dealers, their collection really starts to grow after they've been in it a while. Before, you're trying to get, you're trying to get built up. I always looked at it as I couldn't afford to do it if I wasn't a dealer to own this card. This was the way for me to own it. I just can't keep it right now. But later on, you get to start keeping some of that stuff. Boy, I wish I could have kept way back when. But I started doing shows, I would say mid 80s, maybe a little bit before. Uh, Going to small shows. There were small shows everywhere. And then I opened a shop in 88. I had a shop for several years. I wasn't married. I just lived and breathed cards. I went to I had a regular job. I went to my job. I got off work. I would open my card shop. I would be there till 7 at night, go to bed, go to work. And then I started doing, I was doing shows on the weekends. My father started helping me out, and he would work the show, work the shop while I did shows. And I was buying direct from all the companies, but my dad kept saying, you need to go back. In his coin days, he just said, stop messing with the current. You've got to go backwards. That's where the hobby is. And I took his advice and I just kept going back farther. And then after a while, I still had the shop and I quit buying direct. I still, I wasn't very good when somebody came in and said, hey, do you got a Magic Johnson? No, but I got Thurman Munson. And I kind of shifted my store like that. And then I got to where I got married, had kids.
Mm-hmm.
I kept doing the shows. I slowed a little bit down when my kids were doing sports and things like that, but I was still pretty active in doing the shows. But I did keep my shop, and I would open one day a week, and I would open on Mondays. And guys actually would show up on Mondays. They would direct their sales route, Snap on Man, or whatever they did. They would be in town on Monday. What'd you pick up at the show? What have you picked up recently?
Mm-hmm.
And some days I would get off work and I'd go to my shop. Nobody here. I'd go home. Sometimes be 4 or 5 guys, and we would sit there and talk sports. I might sell a few things. I might not sell anything, but I had that one day a week where I would still have my shop open. And then when I got married, that's when kind of I didn't really do the shop so much. I slowed down, but I've always done shows. While doing the shows, I mean, I think I always did pretty good. I got to know people. I met a gentleman, Wayne Johnson, from Indianapolis. He really showed me a lot. He was, I would say, that's my mentor. Taught me how to treat people. Said treat people right. You know, make things good. You do what you can, and things will. That goes a long ways. And I think everybody's heard in the business, something bad, 50 people hear, something good, maybe only one person hears, but it grows. And Wayne taught me a lot, and he's the one that got me to the national. We set up, we traveled around, we would split costs with hotels and do things like that. This year will be my 27th year at the national.
Congrats.
Two times Wayne and I drove out to California and did the show out there in Anaheim. And when you had the other guys on there, they did bring up my name about things that they were saying. And I think I told you, Sam, at the show, when I heard them saying those things, I didn't hear me saying it. I heard Wayne saying it.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, Wayne was a school teacher, and he was always teaching, and he was always, still today, if somebody has a question, I I try to give my best advice. I think there's dealers out there that don't. They figure I worked hard to get where I'm at. You go work hard, but I think advice can go a long ways for everybody.
Certainly.
And I don't know. I just so now I I still do the shows. Things have been really good, and I'll be honest, things really took off when my wife started helping with me.
How so?
My wife Stacy and I are a great team. When we go to the show, I don't know, she has the guys yucking it up, and I mean, we just things really went at more sales and everything. Not because she's a woman or anything like that, but it was just like she's a great seller. I think I was a great seller. We were good talking to the people. I would. It gave me time sometimes to leave the table. She can run the table herself. She knows exactly what to do or what to do. So I could go out and look around and maybe find a buyer or two, which I couldn't do before. Or also, if somebody brings something to the table, she can take care of business. She might have a question here and there, but that really made things take off for us. And I mean, still today, I mean, I think you probably saw it at Strongsville,
Hmm.
and people see us at the National. I think they look forward to seeing us, and we make a great team.
Yeah, you certainly do. I mean, I've as someone on the other side of the table who passes by, your wife is she's very joyous and just very personable, and it really reflects on the overall vibe that you get from coming to your table. And it's kind of interesting because you kind of see that as well. You know, like Stan and Casey and
Yeah,
was it Craig and Holly? You know, they
right.
set up. It's no surprise that the team dynamic really plays off so well.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's other guys out there that there's two guys working the same booth doing the same thing
Sure.
and that don't have their wife, but I think it really helps having a team and and being involved with your customers. It's maybe a bad thing for me to say, but I just see and I hear it from my customers. Sometimes dealers don't even acknowledge them. Sometimes dealers don't even like, hey, what are you looking for? I think
Mhm.
I've told somebody once, and we're selling entertainment. People got to enjoy themselves.
Yeah.
If cards are so much fun, and if they're not having
Mhm.
fun doing it, or they hear grumpy people, yeah, that's no fun. You know,
Mhm.
that's the part of going to a show is is chewing the fat. I mean,
Absolutely.
you can go to the bar and spend your money drinking, or you can go to the show and spend your money on cards and talk sports just as much fun.
Just make sure you leave yourself a little bit of money for after the show so you can buy a few beers.
There you go. Okay.
um, so I don't mean to kind of go backwards a little bit, but I wanted to kind of understand, like when you were younger and you were buying, I imagine you were buying packs. I don't know
Oh,
if it was at the local drugstore or
yeah.
what.
73, 73 is the first set
Okay.
I ever put together. I was 10. I was born in 63. 73. I don't really remember 72. If they were high numbers, maybe that's why I didn't, but I think it all registered. Yeah, I can put a set together. Like maybe it didn't register when I was 9, and 10 it did. So I was chasing numbers and not players. I was fortunate
Yeah.
that we had like an old gymnasium school that they tore the school down, and the gymnasium there was probably built in the 20s, and it would be freezing in there, but we would all go there and play basketball. And in the summertime, a college kid would kind of get a summer job there and you know have dodgeball or baseball or a pool tournament. But he had baseball card trading day,
That's
and we would ride our bikes there. We would go trade cards, and I would say I was probably trading my Willie Mazes for Rick Mondays
Yep.
because I'm a Cub fan. I didn't know any better, but it was just great fun. I mean,
Well, that seems to be the way that things were. I mean, I remember reading an article about, and forgive me, I just don't know the dealers' names off the top of my head, but the first official show, I think, was like in 1969. I can't remember the name of it, but it was at somebody's house. 13 guys showed up,
right,
and it was like tables. It wasn't like display cases or protectors. It was tables where people had like mountain stacks of cards of different years, and you would just go up and say, "Hey, I'm looking for a 72, Hank Aaron for my set. I have this. If you like," and you would just make trades without, or
well,
well, maybe not 72. It'd be like 68
right,
Rod Carew or whatever. But
right.
you get, yeah,
But I think
that's what
those
it was
guys were
like.
probably even saying, "I've got all that stuff. I'm looking for 40 Braun breads or something, something crazy,
Yeah,
I,
but
I've heard and read those stories. When I was talking about Wayne and there's Steve Johnson, not brothers, but good. They were partners for years as travel partners. And then when Steve kind of slowed down, that's when I started going to stay with Wayne. And I would hear them talk about being at shows, not like they're talking about at somebody's house, but shows in the 70s. And this side of the table was for sale, and this side was only for trade of for something I need. And they would sit there and talk among each other. But I need these. Well, these are only for trade. I'm looking for this and that. I remember Steve saying he didn't even know there were 52 tops when he was high numbers when he was a kid until years later he saw it in Sporting News. Somebody was advertising 52, and he's like, I thought I had them all. I thought I had all these sets. And later on, he was trying to get the current stars, Constantine Roberts and Stanky, and he almost traded his 52 set for those three cards, which because that was the only way he could get it at that time. It might have been a good trade,
yeah.
but now it wouldn't have been a good trade. He didn't do it, and he ended up getting all his 52 highs. But I remember him talking about that trade.
When you go back in time as a kid, are there any trades you wish you could get back from another kid that you traded with?
Um,
That you could think of.
yeah, no, I think to be honest, I probably came out better on those.
You mentioned the one. You mentioned there was like Willie Mays for who was the
For Rick
player?
Monday.
Rick
I,
Monday.
I went to school. My teacher would ask me to bring school cards to school,
Hmm.
and I'm sure he took advantage of me. He was picking out my Clementes and Mazes, and I was getting the Mondays and the Don Kessingers.
Somehow he knew.
Yeah, he was probably older and wiser and knew. But when it came to like the guys I was trading with, I think I did all right.
Yeah.
When I went to Indiana State, I put things on the bulletin board to buy baseball cards, and I got some deals that way. I think some kids were bringing in their dad's cards for beer money, so it worked out pretty good. I got some good stuff that way too.
So I guess this is unrelated, but you said you went to Indiana State, right?
In Terre Haute, yeah.
Yeah. I guess you just missed Larry Bird.
That was before, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was before.
I
I
guess
heard a lot
yeah.
of stories about that, but that was before.
Yeah, he claims Larry Bird still feels the pain from losing that championship
Oh
game.
yeah.
That was like apparently like worse than 87 or worse than 85. He
Yeah.
can't. Um, so let me see. Um, so you said you were a dealer or you set up your first show in the 80s, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
when did you first go full-time dealer? Like when was where you?
Well, I never went full time.
Okay.
I I've just retired. I've worked a job for years. I worked at the same place, and I always just double hustled. Worked a job, did shows. My boss was good to me. If I needed time to go to California to the National, take it off. If I needed extra days to go, it was a small place, and I think I did good work for him, and it was a two-way street. And so actually, I never did it full time.
That's interesting.
I I just did it as a side job. I go back and look. Everybody would tell me, "You're crazy. Quit your job. You'll do better." And when I was doing little dinky shows way back when, this guy might not like me telling this story, but I'll tell it.
Okay.
I'm doing a little mall show, and this guy would always walk up, high school kid, smart as a whip, and it was Steve from Baseball Card Exchange.
Okay.
And that's when Sportsnet came out. And he would get on that Sportsnet and he would see what all the other shops were buying and go to these shows and say, and he would come up and like, I don't know, in 90, I'm making this up because I can't remember the years or whatever. In 92, the Rack Packs might have had home run hitters or something, total defense cards. He would be on the prowl for those, and he would walk the show and buy all those.
Mm-hmm.
And then he would go back and resell them. He was doing that in high school. And I learned real quick, if I saw what he was buying, I would go to my next show and start buying them, because in the next Beckett, all that stuff was up. And Steve was doing all that in high school. And I was doing shows with like Shoeless Joe Yanello. I don't know if you've heard the name. And he got to be pretty big on the internet. And Bryant Drent from Mile High. I can remember doing shows with Drent, and he was just a dealer like me.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys had more gump and more. I'm not going to say more gump, but it's not my personality to leave the secure job. Those guys took it off and went, and look what they've done today. And sometimes I go scratch my head and I say, man, maybe I should have taken this a little more serious. But I'm totally satisfied. Everything has been. I enjoyed the crap of how it's all worked out for me, and for them too. Congratulate for them too.
Do you so if you were doing this as a side hustle, was so for me, I'm starting to set up at shows again after a hiatus of about, I don't know, 6-8 months or so. And now, like, my whole motivation for setting up at shows is I'll put $1,000 aside to buy some inventory stuff. And the goal is to make a little bit on it, to make enough on it so I can put it towards buying stuff for my collection.
Support your habit.
So was that the motivation for you as well? You wanted to be able to have you didn't want to spill into your
I
salary.
didn't look at my wife and say, hey, I really need a Seaver rookie. It's $1,000. And so, yes, that was a motivation to support my habit.
Yeah,
more than taking it into a business.
Gotcha. Yeah. So the whole and does that still is that still a tribute to even?
I heard Stan talk about it. I heard Stan talking about all his collection, and that's way above me. And to be honest, I have lots of cards.
Mm-hmm.
They don't do it to me like they used to, because I've seen so many now. Pre-war stuff, yes, I do like seeing that stuff. But when it comes to back in the day, if I got a 65 man, I was like, man, this is awesome. I got a 65 man. and now it's just like, yeah, I have another 65 man on. And I thought you might ask a question like that. So I just grabbed a few things here. This is the stuff that kind of turns me on now. And it's stuff that I can look at.
Let me see if I can give you the full. There's a way I can set up the full screen. I just need to figure out how it's going to work. All right, hang on. Let me see if I can do this. Not that way. This way. Perfect. So I give you a
So,
bigger screen so people
so,
can see what
so
you're going to show.
I put this out, and I don't even know if you can see this very well. This is from the 1939 Massillon football team. I saw this at a show, and I had to have it. This is like 5 years in a row. The Massillon high school team went undefeated. This is Paul Brown down here somewhere. So Paul Brown, when he was a high school coach, who now today or went on to be the Cleveland Browns coach, and had autogram and won all those championships.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. When I see something like that, that I'll never see that again. If I would pass on that, I would never see that again.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that kind of stuff really
excites you.
Really intrigues me. I'm not saying more than cards. I love cards. Don't get me wrong. I see that stuff. This was another thing, and you don't need. I don't know if you need to go full screen. It's not that big.
No. Oh wow,
it's an ABA ball. And
that's wild.
It's still in the box. It was still wrapped up like it came in the box. It's got the little tie up on the top when it came in the box. It still had the needle and the Rawlings tag and everything came in. So when I see that stuff, that stuff I really gravitate towards.
You're right. I mean, to see it in its original form, it means everything.
Now, granted, don't get me wrong. If everybody saw, I don't know, it might have been in 6 months, a year, I don't know how long ago, there was the crappiest Hoblitzel, no stat, listed in one of the big auctions, and it was an authentic, and it was ugly as can be. Well, here's the sucker that bought it, because that was the last one I needed for that set.
Mm-hmm.
And I was never going to buy up 3 for tens of thousands of dollars. Mm-hmm. So I bought a crapper, so I can at least say, okay, I have one. So I do have cards, but I'll tell you what, this other stuff I have, like Heartlands and Nodders and the old Nodders, and I have all the Dairy Queens and the Big League Stars, and because I can stick them on a shelf and look at them and see them, where my cards are in an album, put in the safe, and I really like things I can look at.
Yeah, no, that's
now. See, you have your cards behind you, so you can see some of them.
Yeah, But
you probably have so many that some you don't see but once in a while.
No, you'd be surprised. I mean, I live in New York City, and I preach this a lot on my own channel, is that, I have to kind of keep it within reason, because I live in a 1-bedroom apartment. It's
okay.
Yeah, you gotta. So I have a little nook, is what I call it. So I concentrate my collection to be more, quantity. I mean, well, quality over quantity. Quality over quantity. I always confuse that. Yes.
Yeah. That's good advice.
Yeah. So I kind of focus on, in similar ways. I mean, there's cool stuff that I like. I got excited when I found this. My Seaver. This is the action cartridge with the cartridge still intact. So you don't see these that often. So stuff like that, and I mean, he's one of my 4 guys, but yeah.
I really enjoy that kind of stuff. I have a lot of cards though.
Yeah.
And
yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, and you talk about customers. Mm-hmm. I always tell customers, and try to, and maybe customers are listening out here. Mm-hmm. I don't think you can ask too many questions. I always tell them, if you're like, if they're new in the hobby or getting involved, ask questions. Yeah. And a dealer shouldn't mind you asking questions. And what should I buy? Well, buy what you like. Always buy what you like. And some people say, do I have to buy mint? I don't think you have to buy mint. I think I had a good customer of mine that bought low grade, and he would only buy Manels, Clementis, Koufaxes, Williamses, Snyders. And at that time, say he was buying a mantle for $50 and now it's 150.
Mm-hmm.
It still appreciates in value. Okay, you can go buy a nice $500 mantle that's now $1,500. It's the ratio is still about the same.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a good market for lesser grade stuff, and if people can't afford nice cards and they're worried about, well, I can't afford nice ones, I don't, why should I even be in this hobby? Don't let the grading stuff bother you. That everything doesn't have to be graded and everything doesn't have to be meant. It's a hobby. It's not, and I tell people it's not a job. You don't have to get everything right now. Take your
Yeah.
time, find the right card for the right money, be patient.
Mm-hmm. Let's see what I had here. So a lot of it's funny because a lot of the questions that I had were already addressed. So like things like, who are some of the other dealers that you befriended early on? You mentioned your buddy
Wayne.
Wayne. Is Wayne still with us?
No, he's gone.
Uh,
Yeah,
um,
it was it's funny. Dealers, I think the dealer network is like a family.
mhm,
I mean, I'm not saying there's at a show there's 200 dealers that there's 200 family members, but
right.
there's little families all over the place in that room, and and you get pretty attached to each other.
Right.
You see each other all the time. You go out to dinner with people all the time. You learn their wives and their kids' names, and you see them grow up. I mean, people ask about my kids because they saw them grow up behind the table. Hey, how's your kids doing? What's going on? And it's the same. It's just to see like Stan's kids getting big now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you see all that going on.
How did I mean, you and Bill are both from Indiana, so like how long has Bill been in the trade for?
To be honest, I'm not sure. I would say probably he's a little older than I am. I would say just about as long.
But
I don't
you
know
guys set up at the same shows probably for many
a,
many years.
a lot of times, but he was from the Carolinas, so
Oh.
I missed all the beginning of his career.
Oh, so he's from the Carolinas originally?
Yeah,
Oh, I thought because I mean I was convinced he was from he's from Indiana too.
no, no, he's from I don't know if it's a North Carolina, I think. Yeah,
Okay, so he moved. I guess he moved over there.
yeah,
Um, oh man. So let me see. I'm just going through the questions that I have. Um, again, like there's like, what did you learn from Wayne? But you mentioned some of the things
yeah.
you learned
I
from
mean,
him.
like I said, Wayne taught me a lot of things. Like I said, most of all, treat people right. You know,
Yeah, be
I
personable.
and I've said some things like when I've tell other dealers, I think you should price your cards.
Oh
I,
yeah.
and Wayne told me that a lot of dealers don't price your cards, and it's like, or they price them on the back even, and it's
Hmm.
like I almost feel like even when I go over to their table, am I bothering them? Hey, what? How much is that? How much is that? Oh, how much is that? And it's like, and customers are shy.
Yeah.
A lot of customers shy. They don't know how to approach you, and it's like, but if they come up and see a price, and I think I can look at, and I'm sure customers do too. They can walk right up to your table and see prices and say, "Hey, this guy's in the ballpark,"
Hmm.
or "This guy's in another planet."
Right.
So and I think it helps you to. I mean, for other dealers, if you think you're getting started, I think it helps to price your cards and give them something. And I'm one, and people have probably noticed I don't budge much from my prices. If somebody comes and asks me about a card, I don't knock down much because I want to encourage somebody to buy it. So I want to put as low on there as I can to begin
Hmm.
with. It's I'm always surprised when a customer comes over and says they have a card for has a price ticket $200 and they get it for 125. I was like, oh my gosh, I might ask that guy, but when I saw 200, I don't even ask.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the things that Wayne taught me. Price your card, let people know where you stand and where you start, and I try to be as orderly as I can.
Mm-hmm. Let me see. Um, so this is kind of just general observation questions that I would
Yeah.
ask. Like, I guess, what were some of the challenges you faced when you opened up the shop, and I guess, you were still working full time, and after work you'd go to the shop. So what were some of the challenges you faced early on when you set up the shop?
Um, it wasn't really any challenge except I was burning the candle on both ends, but but I enjoyed the hell out of it. I was a babysitter there sometimes. Kids would drop off their the parents would drop off their kids there and hang
Mhm.
out all day and spend their $2 in the first 5 minutes and be there for 2 hours. But it didn't bother me. Some of those kids, it's funny, some of those kids became teachers that taught my kids. And
Really?
they would talk to they would talk about my shop to my kids. Oh, I remember going to your dad's shop. We'd ride our bikes up there and talk about it. What when I had the shop open, I would here's a challenge. I would tell the kids to bring the report cards in, and I said we would write down their grades, and for every A you got, you would get a pack of cards, or if you brought your grade up one grade, you get a pack of cards. Now, granted, that's when a pack of cards was only $1, so it
Right.
was or 50 cents. So it wasn't like I was breaking the bank like I would today. But I would do that, and I would have the kids that were, I would say, the main core of kids that would come in that would do
Mhm.
that. But when it created grade time, I would see kids I never saw before would come in, and
That's
they
it.
would all be wanting to turn in their grade cards for, which I always would do it.
Yeah.
I would give them a pack of cards if they brought an A in there. They would all. It was fun. I think I like the kids. I love seeing kids come to my table today. I try to have a talk with them and encourage them and ask them how to approach me, and don't
Mhm.
and to be honest, try to teach them how not to pay the full price. I say I always tell them there's a polite way to ask. What's the best you could do on this?
Yeah.
And I'll hand them the card, and they'll look at me and they're like, what? I'll pay you $5? No, that's not what I'm asking. And I'll go on, and then finally they'll get it out. What's the best you can do on this card?
Mhm.
And usually they get it for. I don't let their dads try to buy their cards that way, because I usually give them a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
And that's the future of our hobby, of those kids. You got to. I try to encourage them to be get into old cards. Don't I I don't know if you've ever heard of Turner Engel. I know there's a lot of he's really into pre-war stuff and stuff like that. Him and his dad would come to the show in Columbus, Ohio, and
Mhm.
he was buying Greg Maddux, played for the Braves,
Mhm.
and I had a big talk with him. I said, you guys need to go backwards and get out of this game used uniform autograph stuff and buy stuff. I bought a T205 set, and that started them. And people out there might know that Turner's a T205 guy. I sold Turner and his dad the very first T205 set
Wow.
that they bought, and now I think Turner set's a very pretty set, and he's very knowledgeable in that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And it makes me kind of proud to say, okay, I got him pushed the right way.
Yeah.
And,
So you opened up a lot of doors and a lot of,
I try to do that with everybody. I
yeah.
try to tell everybody to educate themselves, ask as many questions as they can.
Mhm.
And I try to encourage them, don't spend so much money sometimes, which is kind of crazy. But I'll see a new guy come in the hobby. I haven't seen you. Been to the show before? No, first time I came. I used to collect when I was a kid. And all of a
Mhm.
sudden they're just buying this, buying this. I was like, slow down. I said, all of a sudden you're going to look back. You're going to get to where you're going to say, I can't spend money like this. This is not good. I'd rather him spend a couple $100 over 20 years every time I see him than $1,000 the first time I'm seeing him. And then he's like, this is not good. I can't be. It's a hobby. It's not a job. You got to have fun with it.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I guess, with when we look back, I mean, I remember going to shows. For me, I was going to shows in the '90s. In like Gloria Rothstein was a name. She used to run the shows in White Plains, and I used to go all the time, spend the entire weekend there. And like at that point in time, I mean, the internet wasn't where it is at today, and where you can just be able to go on your phone and look up how much things are going for, how much, how to price things. It was all based on the Beckett at that point. Um, so I mean, when you look back on your time, because I mean, when you were setting up in the '80s, that was like a prime time of when cards were really kind of becoming, pushing into the market in such a way. Um, I mean, what do you like? How do you kind of see the evolution, and how do you see it going forward?
I see it. Well, cards will always be popular. They've been here since 1800s.
Right.
There will always be cards. I don't care what anybody says. And I can remember being in the 90s in the heyday when they just ran the presses until they broke because they just couldn't print as much as they just printed and printed and printed. And and then all of a sudden it just fell off, the strike in 95 and cards were down. And but I my sales were still good. In 2008, when the housing crash and everything, my sales were still pretty good. I think you asked me when we talked about doing this interview about, do I want to show off some cards I have for sale? I don't have, occasionally I get a few big cards, but I don't sell $1,000 cards too often. I think I told you, I said, I'm a blue collar seller. I sell to the guys
The working man.
the working
I
man.
love that. I
I'm
love
the
that.
man dealer. I sell to guys that enjoy the sport and put sets together. I mean, if people have never seen me. I have I have binders of commons. I learned that method from uh, Dick DeCourcy, and Jimmy Ryan does that also out on the East Coast.
Hmm.
And it keeps them in order. People can get to them, and it makes them user friendly. And I used to not have them that way, and I learned from those guys. Hey, this is a pretty good method of doing that. And uh, another thing I learned, and I don't do it as much as I used to because I still do some small shows, 1 day shows. When I go to Chicago or I'm going to go to Pittsburgh here soon, I don't do it there. But I send letters to my customers on these little shows. Like I'm going to do a show in Indianapolis here in 2 weeks, and I'll send a postcard out. And I think you asked me about my email. Well, I don't know how to email. I know it seems crazy to people, but in all these years, I've never had an eBay account, and I've never sold or bought a card on eBay, and I don't know how to email my. Now I have an email address, and my wife gets emails, and she prints them off for me, and I read them, and I say, "Okay, Stacy, will you please send this back to this guy like this?" So, so we make a good team.
Yeah.
But and to go back to this, the you were talking about the everything going up and down. The 90s were good, and it faltered, and it came back, and then in 2008 it kind of faltered again when people were tight with money. I didn't notice it so much because I think most of my customers were 50 years old. They'd been at their job a while. They weren't low man on the totem pole, so they didn't get laid off, or they were a little more set for set in life, had a little more discretionary money. This boom right now is from all the kids that were in the 90s at my card shop that collected cards at that time. You were probably one of them. Were you buying in the 90s?
Of course.
And now you were older, you have discretionary money, and you loved cards when you were in the 90s.
Yeah.
And you still love cards, and now you have a little bit of money. That's what's driving. That's personally what I think is what's driving this market right now. Is those guys have come to age, and now if you look at all those little kids that are walking around with their little suitcases, I don't know. It worries me that maybe what happened to you in the 90s, the Ken Griffey's and the Jose Cansecos, the Don Mattingly rookies all plummeted. Is that going to happen again? Well, it might. And if it does, when those kids get to your age, the next round, they still love cards and they're going to get back into it again. I think it might be a little cyclic, but I think everything's fine. Sometimes I've had a friend that wanted to buy a 52 mantle, and I've said to him for 20 years now, I don't know, it can't keep going up. It's maybe you should wait a little bit. I don't think he's much of a friend anymore. I wishes he would have bought it a long time ago, because it just slays me that thing keep going.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely a unique perspective that I haven't heard before. Is talking about the kids from the '90s buying today, and you're kind of like speaking perfectly what my experiences were, because I'd walk the Gloria Rothstein shows in the '90s with $20 in my pocket, looking at the 1968 Seaver, and think, I can't get that, and I need to make this $20 last all the 3 days that I'm here. So it was always dollar box hunting, and I never forgot that. So now going forward to today, it's like I can buy the Seaver 68 no problem. So it's funny that you mentioned it, because you're absolutely right. That, from me personally, that was my experience.
And I think these kids now, these kids know how to wheel and deal.
Yeah, they knew a lot better, because I think part of that is definitely because of technology.
Yeah, it is. It scares me a little bit because I worry sometimes that I hope it's not all business. I hope they still love cards. I hope they can say Johnny Vandermeer had 2 no-hitters, and that's the record that'll never be broke. I know some people say others, but to me, nobody's going to throw 3. Are they going to say Richie Ashburn had the most hits in the 1950s? Are they going to know all that history of the game? I hope so. It might, and maybe I'm fooling myself, and they're going to say Aaron Judge is the man, and they're going to know all his numbers, and they might be spitting out Barry Bonds 800 and something homers, because unfortunately I don't know that. I just know Hank Aaron's number. But I hope that these guys that are buying and selling on the internet and these Facebook, I hope that we don't lose the history of the game, because that's so important. That's to be honest, we shouldn't be buying these cards because they're worth money. We should be buying these cards because we love. I love cards. We're buying because we love them, and I love hearing that Eddie Joss was a pitcher who passed away at a young age, and and that's why his T205 is such a great card. It talks about it on the back, and they had a benefit game for him. I just hope that they remember all these great, Ducky Medwick with the Triple Crown, and I hope we don't lose that. And maybe the guys ahead of me were saying that about me, and maybe I'm saying that about you, and I know you know the stats, and it's that old saying is when you work your jobs that you look at the kids just don't work like we used to. And maybe that's what I'm saying, but I hope they remember the game, and not just the money value of the cards.
Sure, and I think to kind of add to that point, I mean, people like Garrett, yeah, and Ethan, these guys are young. I mean, they're very young, and they're focused exclusively on the vintage stuff.
Right.
And so that to me is an encouraging sign. I told Garrett, I said, listen, you're going to, in like 10, 20 years, you're going to be the guy that everybody goes to for, for a lot of this stuff. Maybe even sooner. But I mean, when he was at Strongsville, I asked him how he did, and it sounded like he did very well for his first time setting up there. So,
and I think he does the Facebooks, but I think he's doing more shows. And when you do
yeah.
those shows, I think that's where you learn all this history, because your customers want to talk and hear it. I mean, they want to hear. I listened to a guy. I was in Cincinnati this weekend, and I listened to two guys talking about Frank Robinson getting traded to the Orioles, and they got Milt Pappas, and it was, and it just that stuff, and it's a I that worries me sometimes. You don't get that on eBay, and you don't get that on the Facebook
Mhm.
groups. I mean, you get it from you guys and your podcast things and stuff,
Mhm.
but I hope that I don't want that to get lost, because that's, to be honest, the history is what drives all this, I think.
So, the last thing I'll ask is for anybody that is, I guess, just anybody really. It could be for a dealer, it could be for a collector, both. I guess for someone who's entering into, I mean, I know you mentioned collect what you like, and but what advice would you give somebody who's getting into
Like,
this?
like I said, don't ask too many questions. Go to your local show. I think you can buy online, but you should. There's nothing like a show. There's nothing like looking at the cards. There's nothing like uh, asking your dealer, so who should I buy, or why should I buy this? Should I put set together? Should I not put sets together and just buy stars? Those are questions that everybody has, and some guys like sets, some guys like stars, some guys, like I talk condition. Hey, you don't have to buy the nicest cars. Buy who you like, and if you can't afford a 55 maze in a 6 or a 7, which is expensive, I don't think there's anything wrong with a 3. It's a great card, and it's still going to have value. It's a very sought after card. People sometimes ask me, what what am I buying? What are you buying? And it's like, I don't know. But when I look at a shoebox, I would have never said, oh my gosh, I didn't even think about this card. And so it's kind of like what catches your eye. And when you go to the shows, you see
Mhm.
things that you never see. I mean, like the Strongsville show, I mean, it was like a national. If you were into vintage cards,
Yeah.
it was
Mhm.
all there. Um, the national is and will always be the national,
Mhm.
but and it will it there's more old cards at the national than there were at Strongsville.
Sure.
But to be in one place was something else. Now,
Mhm.
now I'm always like, I'll make a little plug here. My wife runs a show in Columbus, Ohio,
Mhm.
and it's known for old cards. And I would say, let me just think, 5, 8, 12, 12, 16, probably one fourth of the table. We have about 85 tables at our
Mhm.
show. I would say 1/5 of those tables were at Strongsville.
Oh wow.
And so that and like Stan sets up there, William Chappell sets up there, Dave Schrader sets up there,
Murderer's Row of vintage.
and I set up there. Then Jack Caracas. He was set up there at Strongsville. He's set up there, and then we have some guys that are set up that have a little bit of vintage in the room that don't set up there because they can't afford the table fees.
Hmm.
And but they have vintage, and I tell people, if you go to a show in Central Ohio, it's a hidden gem with that much old cards in one place.
Yeah, that's sounds ideal.
Yeah, there's guys that will they make the route through there sometime to go visit family, and I'm like, are you really here to visit family, or are you here to show?
Yeah. A little bit of both.
Yeah.
Well, listen, JD, thank you so much for jumping on and doing this. If you want to mention any of the, like you said, you're going to be setting up at Pittsburgh coming up.
I'm actually, I love shows. I do a lot of shows. I'm getting ready to do. This weekend is our show in Columbus.
Great.
This coming weekend, and actually we're having two buildings this time. Usually it's just one building, but every now and then my wife has one building. So there's even going to be more guys set up there this time than normal, and a lot of vintage. Then the week after that, I'm going to do. It's called the Mini Monster in Indianapolis, and it's the first time for it. He has a bigger show, the Monster, in June, but this is a little mini Monster, and I'll go down there and see some of my old customers that I don't get down there as much as I used to, and do that show. It's just a 1-day show, and then I go to Pittsburgh the week after that, and that will be the one in Monroeville.
Gotcha.
And then I'm going to have a little bit of time. It's been a busy. Everybody piles these shows in the spring and the fall, and it's like, whew, I've been showed out.
So you take some time and then get ready for the national.
Yeah, yes, get ready for national. My wife and I will sit down and start filling books and getting ready for the national.
Exciting stuff. Well, again, thank you so much, JD. I appreciate you taking the time. This was great. So.
Okay, Sam, I appreciate everything, and I'll see you at the national probably.
Definitely. I'll see you there.
Okay, thanks, buddy.
Take care, everybody.
Yeah, bye.